Are humans naturally selfish? Is it really true that every human being on the face of this earth only cares about themselves and their own interests above all else? We often see stories of people helping complete strangers in the news. So, how can we be selfish by nature if we're capable of being selfless? So, what does science have to say on this matter? Are humans actually naturally selfish? According to the findings of a recent study, yes, it seems that humans are indeed selfish. But before we get into the details of the experiment and the results, remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this one. Now back to the video. This study was published in Nature Human Behavior. The title of the paper is "Selfishness is a Fundamental Motivating Force in Human Cooperation." The abstract reads, "We propose that selfishness is a fundamental motivating force in human behavior. Across 5 studies, we show that selfishness arises from an evolved psychological mechanism designed to maximize inclusive fitness, which is optimized when individuals act to benefit themselves at the expense of others and even at the cost of their own well-being." Our findings have implications for understanding seemingly altruistic behavior, such as helping others at a personal cost, and for predicting how people will respond to social and economic incentives. Okay, so let's break down the meaning of some of these big words. They're not as complicated as they sound. According to Verowellment.com, inclusive fitness refers to the ability of an animal to increase its genetic representation in future generations. It includes direct fitness, which is the number of offspring an individual produces, and indirect fitness, which is the effect the individual has on the reproductive success of others who share their genes. So basically, the idea is that living organisms are selfish because they want to pass on their own genes to the next generation. But why would you need to act in ways that are costly to your own well-being in order to achieve this goal? Shouldn't having children ensure the passing on of one's genes? Well, think about it. If everyone thought the way you do, the world would be a very different place. No one would help anyone else out. People wouldn't donate to charity. Companies wouldn't invest back into society. In fact, the entire fabric of civilization could fall apart without cooperation. You don't have to look too far back into history to see examples of this. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there were shortages of medical equipment and healthcare workers everywhere. Within just a few weeks, companies who produced things like masks and ventilators ramped up production. Why? Because they knew there was going to be a huge demand for these products. They saw an opportunity to make money. In our day-to-day lives, we see countless examples of people cooperating with each other. For example, imagine you and a friend go to a restaurant. You sit down and order food. After you finish eating, you both decide to split the bill. You each pay half of the amount. In a sense, you're investing in your friend's well-being, and your friend is doing the same for you. At no point did either of you consider, "Oh, I'm not going to pay my half of the bill because I don't feel like it." Hey, John, you'll just have to pay for both of us this time. Most likely, if you had tried that, the friendship wouldn't have lasted long. This is a simple example of what scientists refer to as reciprocal altruism. Basically, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. However, sometimes cooperation isn't always so straightforward. A good example of this is the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is a situation in game theory where two people are arrested for a crime and put into separate cells. Each prisoner is given the option to betray the other prisoner or remain silent. If both prisoners remain silent, they each receive a light sentence. If one prisoner betrays the other, they get off free, while the other receives a heavy sentence. If both prisoners betray each other, they each receive a moderate sentence. The best outcome for both prisoners is to remain silent. However, the rational choice for each individual prisoner is to betray the other, assuming the other prisoner remains silent. This is because if one prisoner stays silent and the other betrays them, the one who stayed silent will receive a heavy sentence, while the one who betrayed will go free. So again, assuming the other prisoner stays silent, it's in each individual's best interest to betray the other. The problem is, if they both follow this line of reasoning, they end up with a moderate sentence, which is worse than if they had both remained silent. In other words, cooperation leads to the best outcome for all involved, but selfish behavior leads to a suboptimal outcome. So what does all this have to do with the question, are humans naturally selfish? Let's take a look at the experiments carried out by the researchers. In their first experiment, the researchers recruited 42 participants. These participants were given a set of instructions and told they'd be paid based on how well they followed them. The instructions were to try and earn as much money as possible for yourself over 2 rounds. The catch was they'd earn money not only for themselves, but also for the other participants in their group. Basically, the instructions incentivized cooperation. The researchers found that the average participant chose to cooperate 68% of the time. In a second experiment, the researchers recruited 60 new participants and repeated the first experiment. Again, the instructions incentivized cooperation. The participants cooperated an average of 67% of the time. In a third experiment, the researchers recruited another 36 participants and repeated the first 2 experiments. The participants cooperated an average of 71% of the time. So you might be thinking, hey, that doesn't really prove that humans are selfish. It seems that most humans care about doing the right thing. Wait, let's take a closer look at the instructions given to these groups. Remember, the goal was to try and earn as much money as possible for yourself over 2 rounds. The catch was that they'd earn money not only for themselves, but also for the other participants in their group. So the participants knew that if they didn't cooperate, the other participants in their group would earn less money. Now, do you remember the prisoner's dilemma we talked about earlier? In the prisoner's dilemma, the optimal decision for each individual is to betray the other, even though both prisoners would be better off if they both cooperated. This is because there's no way to guarantee that the other person will cooperate. So if you don't cooperate, and they do, you'll end up getting a heavy sentence. In the experiments, the participants knew that the other participants in their group would earn less money if they didn't cooperate. Therefore, there was no incentive for any one participant to try and earn as much money as possible for themselves, because doing so would come at the expense of the other participants in their group. In other words, the participants couldn't really act in their own self-interest without taking into account the other participants. The researchers argue that humans have evolved to be selfish, and therefore, in situations like these, participants will always choose to act in their own self-interest, even though acting cooperatively would lead to a better outcome for everyone. In their view, the participants weren't being truly selfish by defecting. Instead, they were being truly selfish by defecting while taking into account the actions of the other participants. What they mean by this is that humans are only able to act in their own self-interest when they know that the other participants will also act in their own self-interest. Otherwise, they aren't really acting in their own self-interest. They're acting in the self-interest of themselves and the other participants. The researchers concluded that selfishness is a fundamental motivating force in human behavior. They acknowledge that there are times when it may not be the best strategy to act in one's own self-interest. However, they argue that acting in one's own self-interest is always an option, and it should always be taken. Ultimately, humans are selfish, but only under certain circumstances. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with this study's findings? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video next. See you in the next video.